Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Joining us today is Gary Heavin. Now, he's an entrepreneur who created one of the largest franchises in the world, Curse, very successful franchise. We're going to talk to him about his second career now, and a career as an executive producer of films, writer, actor in the film Amerigeddon. Now, this is in post-production right now. It's going to be coming out in November 2015. And Alex Jones is in it, really kind of playing against type. He's playing a corrupt big government senator who's kind of your nemesis in this. Interesting to see him playing that kind of a role.
Yeah, the movie opens up with a scene in front of a Senate hearing. And I'm the star and the entrepreneur that sees this thing coming. And I'm challenging the government to act. And Alex plays the evil senator, my nemesis. And I told Alex today that he was particularly evil.
Yeah, well, you know, he's watched them for so long, he really knows what they look like. So even though he's playing against type, you know, he certainly does know the type. Now, of course, it's being directed by Chuck Norris's son, Mike Norris. And I think one of the most interesting things about this is the fact that as you guys were doing this back in January and February, of course, you had written the script long before this. This is well before Jade Helm, and yet in many respects, it parallels a lot of the concerns that we have about Jade Helm. Not that there's going to be an immediate martial law takeover. That's not what we've been saying. We've been seeing, however, the gradual buildup from the NDAA to the NSA. And I see in all of this a merging with the Special Forces operations. What concerns me really is this mastering the human domain is really merging the analytics from the NSA with the military, with the police state, with Homeland Security. Very concerning to look at that in the context of the NDAA.
There's so many elements here. The courts in America just ruled that the mega data collection was illegal.
Yes.
And they're now about to vote on passing the law that's going to allow this to continue. But let's go back and talk about the movie and how we came to this kind of this insight ahead of time. I retired from business and was looking for something to do. And I felt like influencing the culture in a positive way through entertainment was something that I had been prepared for. And Mike Norris and I, the director of my movie, he and I sat down about a year ago and began to write a script that was based on things that were happening. The byline of the movie is a true story that hasn't happened yet. And the movie talked about and demonstrated things that our government has been doing all along. I'll give you a few examples. The National Defense Authorization Act, which has been passed each year for the last several years. Most people don't know this, but the government has the power to declare an emergency for any reason, and I'm talking about the president.
Yes.
And under that act, he suspends habeas corpus. We have no Fifth Amendment rights if the president declares that so. In fact, today, if you're suspected of being a terrorist, and I use the word suspected, you can be arrested. You'll be held without legal counsel, without charges, indefinitely. That is codified into law today in America. That's nuts.
Yes. And if we look at that, remember how this all came to pass. Obama said, I'm not going to sign it if that clause is in there. Then on New Year's Eve, he signs it, and then when people call him on it, he says, don't worry, I'm not going to enforce it. When it was challenged by journalists, they fought tooth and nail to keep it in there. So in that context, that is even more troubling. Yeah,
imagine that, the government, the president would lie to us. And it's become so common that people pretty much accepted it. But in the movie, we really show people the risk that we are at today. Another example would be the Executive Order 13603 that Obama signed, and the Congress made no protest about, that under an emergency, the government can take everyone's resources, everyone's money, everyone's property, including everyone, and put them to work without pay. These are codified into law. And I tell you, I don't believe that our government, the people in power, would be passing these laws and establishing these policies if they didn't intend to use them one day.
Yes, absolutely.
So the movie is a really neat story because my character sees that the government has plotted to be attacked by an electromagnetic pulse. And that's in the news lately because Cheyenne Mountain is just reopened.
Yes.
The military is going back in there because it's a protected facility from an EMP. So this is stuff that's in the news every day. It's not just from my imagination. Well, in the movie, I'm trying to warn everybody that for a couple $1 billion, you can protect the grid, power grid in America. And the Congress itself had done 2 studies that said that 90% of Americans would die in 12 months if we were attacked by an EMP. And this weapon exists in the arsenal of the North Koreans, the Russians, the Chinese. We have it. And it's the easiest way to bring down this country, and yet we're doing nothing to protect the American citizenry from what the Congress says is the most imminent threat to this country.
But it looks like the government is doing quite a bit to protect itself. It's not doing anything for civilian civil defense, but it is doing everything for its own defense, whether it's billions of rounds of ammunition, where they could fight 30 years of conflict at the level that they did in Iraq, or whether it is pre-placement of militarized vehicles with all of our small local police departments. You name it, they're protecting themselves, moving to Cheyenne Mountain, that sort of thing. But they're not doing anything to protect us, even simple things.
It's a great point. You know, they said that they're spending $700 million to move back into Cheyenne Mountain. Well, the entire grid for the entire country to protect the people is only $2 billion, which, by the way, is what we give to Pakistan each year.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you're doing is incredibly important. And of course, shortly after I came here, we had the Paul Revere Film Contest, because we know that people get the larger context. We get the ongoing news, and like we were talking before the interview, it's kind of an ongoing conversation with the news as things develop, as we've seen Jade Helm developing. But to get the bigger context, people really understand that with a documentary, but we can't get that many people. There's a certain percentage of the population that'll watch documentaries. Those people you can wake up. But there's a large population, percentage of the population that is not going to watch them, that will watch dramatized movies. And that's the key. That's why we wanted to get everybody to work on their chops and trying to do this with 1,000 Paul Reveres. And we had some really good entries in it, but I'm really excited to see a professional film with a big budget coming out like Amerigeddon.
You know, the byline on the movie is a true story that hasn't happened yet. And with the Jade Helm stuff that's going on right now, it's pretty eerie, because we basically demonstrated what happens when the U.S. military violates posse comitatus and begins to operate domestically in this country, which was prohibited by law up until very recently for good reason. So Jade Helm is an interesting concept because we predicted it in the movie. I kind of wish the movie had come out last November, then people would be even more aware. People would be more thoughtful.
Yes.
Which, by the way, my goal is to get people to begin to think clearly and to think critically.
Yes.
We're not going to change things in the political process because Washington is bought and paid for through the moneyed interest. And we know that from a study done by Princeton University that researched whether the influence of the average voter determined any of the policies of the government. And Princeton, which is not exactly a conservative bastion, said that the American people have no influence on the government, that it is entirely vested through corporate interest.
And we know that. We can see that. There's so much money, so much power in Washington that it is a black hole for corruption. It just draws those types of people in. I really don't think we're going to be able to fix it by sending the quote-unquote right people to Washington. I think it's going to have to be contained like a cancer from the outside. I think we're going to see things like state nullification, like jury nullification, like people getting active, getting involved at the local level, but they have to understand the context of it. And it's very important, like you're talking about with your movie here, Amerigeddon, it's important for the military to understand where their loyalties lie, to understand that they took an oath to the Constitution. We had Oath Keepers rise up as an organization because of the abuses that we saw in the aftermath of Katrina. People were horrified about that if they actually saw what was going on, what was reported by the news. What really has already happened in Katrina is something that should scare everyone.
Absolutely.
And when we combine that with what's going on with the war on drugs, the SWAT team raids that are happening, people getting their property confiscated without even being charged with the crime, they just say, the property is guilty. We're going to do it as a civil action instead of as a criminal action, so there's no due process here. When you have a government that is operating like that is operating in secret, that has passed this legal infrastructure like you were talking about with the NDA and other things, we should be very concerned. We should be involved with the mission that our military is being put into. That's supporting the troops, I think.
You know, one of the things that we showed in the movie is our hero is a young lieutenant who is ordered to take weapons away from people under martial law. And he realizes, and he's ordered to fire on them if necessary. That's an event that's imminent. That's what's going to happen. So what we showed was that this young lieutenant could make a decision to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies, both domestic and foreign. And he makes the decision not to fire on American citizens, not to take their weapons away. And the idea is that 1 million American soldiers will watch this movie and think about that.
Yes.
In advance of having to make that decision one day, they've had time to think it through.
That is a priceless experience to be able to put that out there, to have people think it through in advance. We know that's what happened in East Germany. That's when the Berlin Wall came down, when you had soldiers who were not willing any longer to fire on civilians. It began with prayer meetings for a long time. And then one day, a bunch of people walk out of the church, walk to the gates, and almost essentially defied them to shoot them. I saw it at the Bundy Ranch. I saw people saying, "You're not going to do this to my neighbors anymore." You know, basically walking up there unarmed, the vast majority of them, the few that had arms, they had them shouldered, but they said, "You're not going to taser a man off of a horse. You're going to have to shoot him off." That's their commitment, to passively stand up in the spirit of Gandhi and others, Martin Luther King, to say, we're not going to take this kind of violence directed at us anymore. We're going to be treated like human beings. That's very important for them to understand that in advance, to think through these different moral dilemmas.
You know, the people in power can only operate if we stay ignorant or in fear. And I'm doing my best to educate people so they're not ignorant. And I'm hopeful that people will follow the example that you're doing, that I'm doing, that Alec's doing, and not be afraid of these people.
Absolutely.
You know, there's really three things that people need to know what's going on in this country right now. Number one, Washington is bought and sold to the moneyed interest. There is just no influence that we have anymore. They don't care about us. They're not concerned with the Constitution. Washington's gone. And we're blessed that we live in a state, the state of Texas, that still has a respect for the citizens, a respect for the Constitution. In fact, I believe Texas is going to be a sanctuary in the future. And I've had this discussion with the governor and the attorney general. So we're blessed to be here. The second thing people need to be aware of is the mainstream media. 98% of it is owned by 6 corporations. And these corporations are bought and paid for by the moneyed interest. And they follow a script. And if you rely on the mainstream media for your news, you're fooled today. And there's so many examples, whether it's the war in Ukraine, where Putin's the demon and is going in and started this thing. Well, the American government funded the overthrow of the Ukrainian government. We started it. And imagine doing this on the border of a nuclear power. You know, how stupid are these people in power? And, you know, they like to portray themselves as being the elite and brilliant. They're the stupidest people, the most foolish people I could ever imagine. And they're the ones that are establishing the world that we live in. And it's nuts.
I would say General Breedlove looks more like Dr. Strangelove. It's almost like they have a death wish. And of course, perhaps they do. That's what Paul Craig Roberts has pointed out. He thinks that they want this war. It's a way that they can remake society. There is something that's going to happen that could remake society, and we have many different pressure points where that could happen. I'm really anxious to see this movie, Amerigeddon. Again, it's going to be released sometime in November. It's in pre-production now. We look forward to be released then.
November 2015. We'll be back on the show to talk about it and let people know how to watch it at that time.
That'll be great. Yeah, the clip that I've seen looks excellent. Thank you so much for doing this. It is a very important way to wake people up. Very important. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for tonight's news. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. And if you're not a subscriber to Prison Planet TV, please support us with your subscription. It's a way that you can watch the news every Monday through Friday as it's happening at 7 Central. It's also a way that you can share all of Alex's documentaries with your friends. Up to 20 people can watch this simultaneously. Join us again tomorrow night at 7 Central.
Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
You are watching the Infowars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.